The Pinebrook Country Club's championship golf course stretched across 280 acres of perfectly manicured Kentucky bluegrass, with rolling fairways that had challenged golfers for over 60 years. The clubhouse, a stately colonial building overlooking the 18th green, served as the social heart of the city's business and professional community. Today, it was hosting Dad's 62nd birthday golf tournament, an annual tradition that had grown from a casual game between friends into a 16-player event complete with prizes, catered lunch and enough competitive spirit to fuel arguments that would last until next year's tournament. I stood on the first tee at 9:30 a.m., watching the final foursome prepare for their round. Dad looked distinguished in his navy polo and perfectly pressed khakis, clearly enjoying his role as host and birthday celebrant. At 62 he still had a decent swing and the kind of confidence that came from 40 years of membership at Pinebrook. "Rebecca," he called out as he spotted me near the pro shop. "I didn't expect to see you here this early. Wouldn't miss your birthday tournament, Dad." He walked over with obvious pleasure, golf club in hand, and that particular smile he wore during his favorite activities. "This is going to be a great day," he said, gesturing toward the course. "Perfect weather, the greens are in excellent condition, and we've got a fantastic group of guys signed up." The guys were Dad's usual golf partners, successful men from various professions who shared his love of the game and his appreciation for Pinebrook's amenities. Doctors, lawyers, business owners, and retired executives who'd built their social lives around Saturday morning foursomes and 19th-hole conversations about everything from stock portfolios to grandchildren. "Are you planning to watch from the clubhouse?" Dad asked. "I thought I might walk along with some of the groups if that's okay." "Of course. Though you might get bored, we take our golf pretty seriously around here." He chuckled. "Not like those public courses where anyone can just show up and play." Before I could respond, his regular foursome approached: Bill Morrison from the law firm Dr. James Patterson, and Tom Rodriguez, who owned a chain of auto dealerships. "Gentlemen," Dad announced, "you remember my daughter Rebecca." They greeted me with polite warmth, the kind of practiced courtesy that came from decades of social interactions at country club events. "Rebecca," Bill said, "your father's been telling us about what is it you do again?" "I work in hospitality management," I said simply. "Hospitality management," Dr. Patterson repeated thoughtfully. "That's a growing field, isn't it?" "It has its opportunities." Dad's expression shifted slightly, taking on that particular look I'd learned to recognize over the years. The one he got when conversations threatened to venture into topics that made him uncomfortable. "Rebecca works for hotels," he explained quickly. "Some kind of operations consulting thing." "Interesting," Tom said. "The hotel industry must be challenging these days with all the online booking platforms and competition." "There are definitely challenges," I agreed. "Well," Dad said with forced cheer, "we should probably get started. These birthday tournaments don't play themselves." As the group moved toward the first tee, I heard Dad continue the conversation in what he probably thought was a quiet voice. "Rebecca's still figuring out her career path," he was saying. "Hospitality work doesn't really offer the kind of stability or income potential of traditional professions." "She seems like a bright young woman," Dr. Patterson offered diplomatically. "Oh, she is. Very bright. But sometimes intelligence doesn't translate into practical success, if you know what I mean." I followed at a distance as they teed off, listening to the comfortable banter of men who'd played together for years. The conversation flowed easily between golf technique, business dealings, and family updates, the kind of relaxed social interaction that made country club membership valuable beyond just access to the golf course. By the sixth hole, more groups had joined the conversation as players waited for slower foursomes ahead. Dad was in his element, holding court with stories and commentary that kept everyone entertained. "The thing about Pinebrook," he was saying to a group of 8 men gathered around the tee box, "is that it maintains standards. Not everyone can afford to belong here, and that's exactly the point." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. "Exclusivity matters," Bill added. "When you're paying significant membership fees, you want to know you're associating with people who understand quality and can appreciate what a place like this represents." "Exactly," Dad continued, warming to his theme. "Take my daughter Rebecca for example. Sweet girl, but she could never afford membership at a club like this. She works in hotels, operations management stuff. Entry-level hospitality work." The group nodded understandingly, clearly familiar with the economic realities of country club membership. How much does membership run these days? Asked Mike Chin, one of the newer members. Initiation fee is $75,000, plus annual dues of $18,000, Tom answered. Not exactly pocket change. Worth every penny though, Dr. Patterson added. The golf course, the dining facilities, the networking opportunities, you can't put a price on belonging to an institution like this. Dad nodded approvingly. That's why I've been a member for over 20 years. Pinebrook represents achievement, success, the kind of lifestyle that comes from building something meaningful with your career. He glanced toward where I was standing near the cart path, clearly including me in his narrative. Some people understand that level of commitment, he continued, and others just don't. Rebecca's a good kid, but she's never really grasped what it takes to achieve this kind of lifestyle. The hospitality industry can be tough, Mike offered charitably. It's not really about the industry, Dad replied. It's about ambition, financial planning, understanding what success actually looks like. Rebecca drives a 10-year-old Honda and lives in a small apartment downtown. She's never going to be the kind of person who could afford to belong somewhere like Pinebrook. The conversation continued as the group moved through their round, with Dad using my apparent lack of country club membership potential as an example of how not everyone was cut out for the lifestyle that Pinebrook represented. By the 12th hole, his commentary had evolved into a more direct assessment. The truth is, he was telling a larger group that had gathered during another course delay, my daughter is a loser. I hate to say it about my own child, but sometimes you have to face reality. The word loser carried across the fairway with unmistakable clarity. She can't even afford membership here, he continued. 29 years old and she's never built anything substantial, never achieved anything that would qualify her for the kind of community we have at Pinebrook. Several men looked uncomfortable with the harsh assessment, but nobody contradicted him. Sometimes as parents, Dad said with the authority of someone delivering wisdom, you have to accept that one of your children just isn't going to achieve the same level of success as their peers. That's when I decided I'd heard enough. I walked calmly toward the clubhouse, past the groups of golfers who were finishing their front nine and heading for lunch. The Colonial building looked magnificent in the late morning sunlight, its white columns and brick facade representing exactly the kind of institutional elegance that had made Pinebrook a symbol of achievement for over 6 decades. Inside, I found James Mitchell, the club's general manager, reviewing lunch preparations in his office. "Ms. Henderson," he said, standing immediately. "I didn't realize you were here today. How can I help you?" "James, I need you to do something for me regarding the Henderson family membership." His expression became carefully professional. "Of course. What do you need?" "I want their membership revoked. Effective immediately." "I see. May I ask the reason for this action?" "Personal matter. The primary member has made some choices today that require immediate consequences." James nodded and pulled up the membership database on his computer. "The Henderson family membership has been active for 22 years. Should I prepare any specific documentation for the revocation?" "Just handle it quietly and efficiently. Disable their member privileges, revoke clubhouse access, and have their golf carts returned to the pro shop." "What about their current round?" "Let them finish, but make it clear that this is their final day at Pinebrook." "Understood, Ms. Henderson. I'll handle this immediately." I walked back toward the golf course, where Dad's tournament was entering its final stages. Most of the players were on the back nine, and the competitive energy was building toward the traditional 18th hole finish and awards ceremony. I positioned myself near the clubhouse patio where I could see the approaching groups and the inevitable moment when Dad would discover his membership status had changed. It came at 1:47 p.m. Dad's foursome had just finished the 16th hole when their golf carts suddenly stopped working. All 4 vehicles came to a complete halt simultaneously, their electronic systems apparently shut down by remote control. "What the hell?" Dad said, pressing the accelerator pedal with no result. "Mine's dead too," Bill said from the cart beside him. Dr. Patterson was checking his cart's battery display. "This doesn't make sense. These were fully charged an hour ago." That's when James Mitchell appeared, walking across the fairway with obvious purpose and 2 security guards flanking him. "Mr. Henderson," he said formally as he approached Dad's stopped cart. I need to speak with you about your membership status. Dad looked confused. My membership status? James, what's going on with these carts? Your club privileges have been revoked, sir. I'm going to need you to return to the clubhouse and complete the termination paperwork. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear conversations from other groups 3 holes away. Revoked. Dad repeated. What are you talking about? Your Pinebrook membership has been terminated, effective immediately. You'll need to gather your personal belongings from your locker and surrender your member credentials. Bill, Dr. Patterson, and Tom were staring at this exchange like they might be witnessing a medical emergency. James, there's obviously been some kind of mistake, Dad said, his voice taking on the authority he used when managing crisis situations. I've been a member here for over 20 years. My dues are paid through the end of the year. There's no mistake, sir. The termination order came directly from ownership. Ownership? What does ownership have to do with anything? James glanced toward where I was standing on the patio, then back at Dad. Mr. Henderson, are you not aware of who owns Pinebrook Country Club? Of course I know who owns it. The membership owns it. We're all shareholders. Actually, sir, Pinebrook was acquired 5 years ago by Meridian Hospitality Group. We're now privately owned. Dad's face was going through several distinct phases: confusion, concern, and growing alarm. Privately owned by whom? James looked directly at me, then back at Dad. By Ms. Rebecca Henderson, sir. Your daughter. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Dad's golf club slipped from his fingers and clattered on the cart path. Dr. Patterson made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. Bill was staring at me like I might be an apparition. That's impossible, Dad whispered. I assure you it's not impossible, sir. Ms. Henderson purchased Pinebrook in 2019 through her hospitality management company. She's been the owner and primary stakeholder for over 5 years. Tom finally found his voice. Rebecca owns this country club? She owns this club, the Riverside Golf Course, the Mountain View Resort, and 12 other hospitality properties throughout the region, James confirmed. Meridian Hospitality Group is one of the most successful private club management companies in the state. Dad was looking back and forth between James and me like we might suddenly reveal this was an elaborate practical joke. But she said she worked in hospitality management, he said weakly. She does, sir. She manages a portfolio of hospitality properties worth approximately $180 million. The number hung in the air like expensive cologne, present, unmistakable, and redefining everything that had happened over the past 4 hours. $180 million? Bill repeated. That's the current asset valuation of Meridian Hospitality Group's property portfolio, James confirmed. I walked down from the patio and approached the group of men who were all staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to dawning comprehension. Hi, Dad, I said calmly. How's your birthday tournament going? He stared at me for several long moments before finding his voice. Rebecca, you own Pinebrook? I do. And all those other properties James mentioned? I do. But you drive that old Honda, you live in that small apartment. I drive a reliable car and live in a downtown condo that's convenient to my office. I don't need status symbols to validate my success. Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. Rebecca, I think we owe you an apology. We had no idea about your accomplishments. You had the idea my father gave you. Which brings us to why we're having this conversation. I looked directly at Dad, who was still gripping his golf cart steering wheel like it might provide stability in a suddenly unstable world. For the past 4 hours, you've been telling your friends that I'm a loser who could never afford membership here. You've explained to anyone who'd listen that I'm not successful enough to belong to a community like Pinebrook. Rebecca, I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. Every time I tried to tell you about a successful property acquisition or a major renovation project, you'd change the subject or explain why hospitality work wasn't a real career. But if you owned this place, why didn't you just tell me? Because I wanted you to be proud of me for who I am, not for what I own. I wanted you to value my achievements because they mattered to me, not because they impressed your golf buddies. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Dad processed the complete reversal of everything he thought he knew about his daughter's life. So when you revoked my membership, he said slowly, I revoked it because you publicly called me a loser at the country club I own, in front of members whose fees pay my mortgage, while playing a game on greens I personally designed during the 2020 renovation. Tom was frantically Googling on his phone. Meridian Hospitality Group. Rebecca Henderson, founder and CEO. Rising star in private club management. There's a whole Forbes profile about you, Bill added, staring at his phone. The article was about innovative approaches to country club modernization while maintaining traditional values. Dad finally released his grip on the steering wheel. Rebecca, I feel sick. You feel embarrassed. There's a difference. How can you forgive me for what I said today? Because you said it out of disappointment, not malice. You were frustrated that your daughter didn't fit your definition of success, so you used me as an example of failure without understanding what I'd actually built. I pulled an envelope from my golf bag and handed it to him. What's this? Your birthday present. Ownership transfer documents for the lake cabin in Tennessee that you and Mom have been talking about for 15 years. He opened the envelope with shaking hands and stared at the property deed. Rebecca, this must have cost a fortune. It's paid for, fully renovated and legally transferred to you and Mom. No strings attached. But after everything I said today, Dad, you're my father. I don't love you conditionally based on whether you understand my career success. I love you because you taught me to work hard and build something meaningful, even when you couldn't see that I'd actually done it. Dr. Patterson stepped forward. Rebecca, on behalf of the group, I want to apologize for our assumptions today. You don't need to apologize. You responded to the information you were given. But we should have asked better questions. Now you know to ask better questions. That's how people learn. James Mitchell cleared his throat diplomatically. Miss Henderson, what would you like me to do about the membership situation? I looked at Dad, who was staring at the property deed like it might disappear if he blinked. Reinstate the Henderson family membership, I said. With a notation that the primary member has completed sensitivity training regarding assumptions about other people's success. Sensitivity training? Dad asked weakly. You're going to spend next Saturday helping in the pro shop, learning about club operations from the ground up. Sometimes the best way to understand success is to see how much work goes into maintaining it. You want me to work in the pro shop? I want you to understand that this place you value so much exists because people work hard to maintain it. Including your daughter. As the afternoon continued and Dad's tournament concluded with a very different energy than anyone had expected, I realized that the real victory wasn't proving my ownership of Pine Brook or demonstrating my business success. It was finally having the chance to share my actual achievements with a father who could see me clearly, not as the daughter who didn't measure up to country club standards, but as the person who'd set those standards while he wasn't paying attention. Later that evening, as I walked through the clubhouse I'd owned for 5 years, reviewing operations and planning future improvements, I reflected on how the day had unfolded. Dad's birthday tournament had become a lesson in assumptions, respect, and the difference between appearing successful and actually building something meaningful. The 18 holes of perfectly maintained golf course represented thousands of hours of work, millions of dollars in investment, and the kind of attention to detail that created experiences worth celebrating. But the most valuable thing I owned wasn't visible from any fairway. It was a relationship with my father rebuilt on truth instead of assumptions, worth more than any country club could ever be.